What's up, everybody? Welcome aboard to Bubba's Bottom Line, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And yeah, here we are in another week, and of course, we just came through a week with the Federal Reserve doing their thing, and of course, doing it well, nothing, which is what they always do. And of course, it had very little effect on markets, but it seems to me that there's still an immense amount of pressure on the NASDAQ now as we have rotated from different sides, and it looks to me that there's more of the moving to the safety plays, because as we look at the overall markets, the strongest market right now is the Dow, which would indicate that we are more moving towards some safety play assets versus the Russell, which would be more high risk, and of course in between the NASDAQ and the S&P. But overall, you see that volatility continues to wane and is extremely low, which is just another sign that the entire world is so complacent that nobody cares. Everybody knows that the markets may never go down again, and this is the type of action you get. Now you tie into this the pundits, chirping and cheerleading the markets higher. And what you end up with is a trap of the poor, innocent retail investor once again, who gets sucked into a market that is probably at the top. We will call a top here. That does not mean that we are selling aggressively. All it means is that we don't think that there's much more room to the upside, if any. So we will say that the top of the markets are in, and we'll see from there. But I think the interesting things that we look at, going back into last week, is we knew the Fed was going to raise rates, and the worst kept secret in history, they're going to hike. And they did hike. But the bonds continue to go higher, pushing rates lower even though the Fed is hiking. That's not the right correlation. The markets were very much illogical based on the different markets. And what we're really seeing here is that something is amiss, and that there's some fear somewhere underneath the surface, because the bond traders, the fixed income markets, which are the biggest markets in the world by a big percentage, are continuing to exhibit some fear out there. Now, the other side of the coin, we saw a dollar that continued to stay weak. I mean, it's having trouble getting off of that baseline of bringing back anywhere near where it was during the original rally. So the dollar remains weak. We have gold that all of a sudden had suddenly weakened. All right, now it made it up to 1,300, which is what we thought we would see, and we did expect a little bit of a sell-off. But overall, it did come back, and it came back a lot farther than we thought it would do, and it came back just below 1260. Crude oil, which is working in target to what we've been thinking all along, is continuing to get pounded. But you would expect to see some sort of a bounce somewhere around here, just either some profit taking or somebody taking a shot, or maybe the lows are in. Now, I don't believe the lows are in. I think we still have got 40 on target. I think that you can see when manipulators truly try to manipulate price, they get it stuck up there, and they deserve it. That's OPEC I'm talking about, of course, here. But you've got a whole bunch of things that don't make a lot of sense. And of course, the biggest deal of the week, last week, was Amazon taking over Whole Foods. Now you wonder, what that was for and why that happens. Well, basically, Amazon just picked up about 500 distribution centers, got them into the grocery business, got them into the high-end neighborhoods, and so I think it's a pretty good deal for Amazon. I don't think it's such a good deal for everybody else, and I think this is what we're seeing here, is we're seeing Amazon trying to take over the world. And I think this is a problem when you don't allow free markets to really work and you manipulate them out. That'll be part of our commentary later, so stay tuned for that. But you've got a situation that now Amazon is taking it, first of all, to Walmart, Target, and the grocery stores, but they're really taking it to Costco here. Because Costco and Amazon are the two models that work very similar together. In other words, Costco, they don't make big margins on their product. They make their money on memberships. Amazon, very similar. So this should be an interesting battle. And now you've brought the warehouse club to the online club, and we'll see what it does. But it does create some areas of concern. It does create some problems. And of course, many are calling this, going to make this a great deflationary cycle. But I don't see that. I think that we've got too much going on in our minds. I think we've got too many things that we remember how they used to be, and that's not how they are today. And I think that, what is wrong if there's deflation, okay, if you're getting true free markets? See, the problem is we don't have free markets. It's manipulated. So that becomes more of the problem. And these are things that we have to look at. And of course, these are all going to be part of the commentary later, because obviously you know that I'm pissed off about it. But the big picture here is simple. All right? Amazon is going after everybody, and nobody is safe. And as they wipe out competition, they can go back in, force lower prices, and also they can, if they want to use some more brick and mortar, because they're wiping out, they can now get some better rents and buildings and things like that. So it's a really big strategic plan that Amazon is pulling on. And I think that these are things that are more the problem. I have no problem with what they're doing. I think that they're obviously very smart. But overall, I think that there's a lot more going on here. And I think it will create a lot bigger problems before we're all said and done. I think that when you look at the stock was up huge on Friday, but did fail. But I think you're going to see a major tumbling here. I think you've got a lot of issues and a lot of problems, and we continue to ignore every single problem that comes by. And I think that becomes the bigger story, is the ignorance of investors and of the American people that say, well, it's always okay. And I think that's where we make the mistake, where we allow things to continue to go on as if that was the way it was always done. And I think that's where you make the bigger mistake, is not trying to correct the errors that we have. And of course, we have plenty of errors in this country, because we have a bunch of dopes in the swamp. And of course, they're not going to give up anything, and that becomes the bigger problem. But we'll talk more about that and more when we come back from the break. This is Todd Bubba Horowitz, Bubba's Bottom Line, Real Markets, Real People. We'll be right back after the break. Make sure you catch the Bubba Show every day at 2 to 3 Eastern Time at libertytalk.fm. The Bubba Show, Todd Bubba Horowitz. We're going to come right back with more of Bubba's Bottom Line after the break. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horowitz with you, and we're looking at obviously a lot of different things, and you have to wonder, where the Federal Reserve is coming from. You have to wonder where the investors are coming from. You have to wonder what the heck is going on here. I think when you look at the bigger picture, you've got the fear mongers out there clamoring for the end of the world. Now, when you look at them, I'm not going to name them, but I'm sure you can figure out who they are. They're on major network TV all the time. These guys have been calling for the end of the world since the beginning of the world. Now, again, I say that the economy is in trouble here, but that we can work our way out of it. And nothing has really changed dramatically since these dopes continued to out there screaming and hollering how the world is coming to an end and all these problems that we have. And I want to remind you that those are only done so that they can sell you something that you may or may not need. And of course, I will say you probably won't need it, but they're trying to sell you on the idea of fear. They're trying to fear you into things that are not correct. And I think that in itself is just ridiculous. When we look at the overall situation, nothing has changed in other than the size of the debt that we have. But the size of the debt is grown in proportion with everything else. And of course, you talk about making these big adjustments and the growth and where this is going to come from. Now, the question is where is the growth going to come from? I have no doubt that the markets are going to have a major meltdown. There is no doubt that we're going to have a major correction. But it's not going to be the collapse of the system. It's going to be the same as always. It's going to be a big beatdown, a lot of panic, a lot of fear. But where are we going to create this growth that we keep looking for? You know, we want tax cuts, we want health care, we want all these other things, but where is the growth going to come from? And that's the bigger problem. You've got too many people fighting in Washington on trying to worry about impeaching President Trump versus trying to get things done for the American people. Now, again, I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. I could care less, all right? I'm saying to you that whatever side you're on, now is the time that we need to work together and try to make the things get done so that we can save the country from a major debacle. I mean, if you look at some of the states, if you look at Illinois, for example, that is going bankrupt, right? Now, again, what do you think? It's just going to happen in Illinois? If we do not draw a line here somewhere, the devastation will be bigger. But the real problem is the devastation comes among the middle class. It doesn't come among the wealthiest because they're always going to survive. And I think this is the problem that we continue to ignore when we listen to these things and we hear all these people tell us what we're supposed to be doing, because everybody's working on that same dumb theory of, you know, well, we can continue to borrow and do things to get our way out of that instead of actually making the really hard cuts. And these are the things that we look at from a big picture, all right? And if you look at some things that are going on, if you look at Bitcoin, why do you think Bitcoin is going through the roof? Because there's a lot of fear out there, all right? You know, there's reasons for everything and markets for everything. And if you continue to believe that because we've always done it this way, this is the way it should be done, we've always done it this way, that's how we got into this major problem that we're in right now. All right? That's the reason we're in a problem. Not because of Bush or Obama or Trump or whatever. It's because we don't take care of business. All right? You may not like the politics of who's ever in office at the time, but it's allowing the swamp, it's allowing the Congress and the Senate to do the things that really take advantage of the American people. All right? That's the bigger issue. The debt ceiling coming up, that's going to be an issue. All right? Because what they're going to do is they're just going to print more money. All right? Allowing the banks to lend out more money than they have, that's a problem. All right? So again, the bigger story comes down to how do we change direction and quit doing things the way we always did them. You know, again, it's the way we always did it, so it's the right way. That is not correct. You have, at some point, you have to make a change. Now, we've now managed, you know, $20 trillion in debt. That's not the right way to do things. And we have to force things to be done on a budget, and like everybody else, like you and me, the government should have to be budgeted as well. And that's where I think you're going to see these bigger problems come in. And that is the bigger issue, is that we continue to allow it to happen. And here we are with a president that wants to try to make things happen. But yet, all we hear every day is Russia, is impeachment, and all these other things, instead of, well, we can worry about the impeachment. You want to impeach him? Great. But let's get things done while we're waiting to impeach him. Let's not waste another 4 years on nonsense. That's the real problem. And that is why the economy makes no sense. But that's one of the reasons you're seeing the bond markets continue to rally. That's one of the reasons you're seeing the Bitcoin rally. That's one of the things you're seeing some of the more fear assets going higher. Those are the things that we need to adjust, not anything else, because we need to return to treating this country more like a business, because we are running a business. All right? And that's really the bigger problem. We're going to step out here for a break. This is Bubba's Bottom Line, Real Markets, Real People. Make sure you get the Bubba Show every single day at 2 to 3 Eastern on LibertyTalk.fm. And while you're at it, try out audibletrial.com/The Bubba Show. And you can get some Audible books. And of course, we've got our friend Danielle D. Martino Booth, who wrote the book Fed Up. We're going to step out here for a break. We'll be right back with more of Bubba's Bottom Line right after the break. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line, Real Markets, Real People. And of course, I am Todd Bubba Horowitz. And, you know, as we look back and look ahead, we've got an economy that is faltering. We have that lack of growth we talk about almost every single week, which is obviously really not a real reason for it. We could actually improve that, of course. We've got to get the big guns out and, quit worrying about the petty stuff. But, when you see oil collapsing, now I couldn't be happier that oil is collapsing because those crooks and thieves from OPEC deserve it to get stuck right where right where the sun don't shine, as they say. They deserve it. So I'm thrilled that it's down for that reason. I'm thrilled that the American frackers have been able to take advantage of a lot of this. But part of the problem here is we have such a lack of demand. Now, part of the lack of demand would be, I would say, more fuel efficiency. But a lot of the lack of demand is now places like Amazon. People don't go out and shop as much, so they're not driving as much. Now, it doesn't just affect the gas station, it affects the restaurants and everything else along the way. So you see, it's the velocity and the way that money rolls. So if I don't drive my car, I'm not going to need my car to be fixed as often. I'm not going to need as much gas. I'm not going to eat out as much. So everything has a chain effect on everything. And when you take away the ability for the average person to actually survive, you are taking away everybody at one time. That is where this whole problem becomes the bigger mess, is the lack of the ability for every business to succeed. Now, I'll just give you a quick example. When I was on the trading floor, we had, let's say, between the 3 trading floors in Chicago, we might have had 20,000 traders down there. Okay, so when they started to close the trading floors, that's 20,000 traders they got rid of, but it wasn't just the 20,000 traders. It was the 30,000 clerks and the 50,000 back office and the 80,000 managers and all of the restaurants and parking lots around that went out of business. That's the bigger problem. That's why we can't seem to get past and get into a growth situation. The problems that we have in this country is we allow too many things to slide by instead of handling business the way it should be handled. And this goes back to 2008 when they should have let the banks go out of business. Again, you want to make the depositors good because you're the lender of last resort, Federal Reserve, that's fine. You give the depositors a check for what they had deposited, but why put the banks back in business? They continue to print money as well. If you don't understand fractional banking, they're taking money and borrowing on that money. So they're lending out 9 times what supposedly they have in reserve, and I would bet you whatever, they don't have that much in reserve, but it doesn't matter. I don't know for a fact, that's just an opinion. But the whole thing is a big mess, and until we solve that mess, it's going to continue to be this type of situation. But this is how it has been. But if you've noticed, take a look at the amount of money that you're making today versus what you made before. Take a look at what things cost, because they continue to beat this inflation tag. And inflation is great if it's natural. If the markets bring it to it, then inflation is great. But if you continue to have trying to fix inflation as the Federal Reserve is, that is not a good situation. Again, artificial manipulation markets don't succeed. When you're trying to create something that is not there, it doesn't work. So when you're trying to inflate the asset prices so that you can tax people more, so that you can pay for that stupid Ponzi scheme that you're running, legalized Ponzi scheme, okay, that you continue to print money to bring in new money to pay back old debt to continue to float the system, that becomes a problem. Because the only reason that they need inflation is because they need new money to come in so they can prop it up so you and I can pay more taxes. This is the overall sadness that you should feel today, as knowing that they're trying to inflate what you own that you've already paid for and make you pay more tax on it. For example, your house. All right? They want to increase the amounts of dollars that you have to pay so they can continue to print. Now, this is the issue, because it's one that will never be solved until we either end or audit the Fed and put the Fed back on the the right direction of what they were supposed to do. But of course, if you listen to some of the conspiracy theorists, they were supposed to do exactly what they're doing, stealing all the money. So, again, if you go back and look into the Rothschilds and those, I mean, again, I'm not that far back, but again, you can look at that, and those are things that certainly make sense when you look at the bigger picture right now. And that is the overall bigger problem that we have here. So we have a mess, and there's a real good reason for why we have a mess. And when we come back from the break at Bubba's Bottom Line, I'm going to give you my commentary, and that is what I think is the bigger mess. In the meantime, this is Bubba's Bottom Line, real markets, real people. We're going to step out here for our final break and come back. And remember, the Bubba Show every day at LibertyTalk.fm, 2 to 3 Eastern Time. And of course, don't forget the Sporting Edge on the weekends. In the meantime, this is Bubba's Bottom Line. We're going to step out for a break. We'll be right back with more of Bubba's Bottom Line. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horowitz with you. And of course, I always finish up with my opinion. And of course, you all know I have an opinion, right? I mean, how could I not have an opinion? And I actually wrote about it. And it's really got me pissed off. All right. I continue to listen to these jackasses speak about the stock market, about the economy, and they continue to tell me how good everything is. And I look around and I go, where is it any good? And the biggest thing I can find, the thing that gets to me, is what happened to true free markets and true price discovery. And I ask you, and I've asked you this before, do you see anywhere where we have true free markets anymore? And the answer has to be no. We do not have free markets anymore because everything is manipulated based on the money and the Fed, and it does not allow markets to work. Now, markets themselves, any market, bond markets, stock markets, flea markets, it doesn't matter. They are very capable of pricing out and pricing assets. Because if you and I meet on the street corner and you got a watch you want to sell me, all right, and you go, hey, I want 20 bucks, I say, I'll give you 10, and we meet at 15, well, what we did is we created a free market, we had some price discovery, and I bought a watch. So we had the exchange of goods for services or money for goods, and we exchanged wealth. All right? We don't have that anymore. Everything we have now is totally manipulated by starting with the Federal Reserve. All right? Because think about it. If you look at any market that we have, what's driving the market? It's whether or not you can get cheap money or not. All right? It's not. They're not letting free markets price out. I would bet, now I don't know this for a fact, but I would bet that if we leave the free markets to price out interest rates, they'd be higher right now. Because why do you think that Prosper and Cabbage and all these other peer-to-peer lenders, and I give whoever's figured it out credit, they're not getting, they advertise low rates, but they're getting 10, 12% from these borrowers because they can't get anywhere else. Now, you don't think that the banks could get higher rates? And again, I'm not saying they deserve higher rates. I'm saying that if you put in a true price discovery model, then interest rates would price themselves. Just like gasoline, just like any other thing you buy is priced out by the free market and price discovery. But when you manipulate and when you let the economists from the Federal Reserve who don't have any idea where they even are, all right, yes, they're all big graduates of big time colleges, but they have no idea where they're at. They couldn't survive if they're out on the road and they get a flat tire. I'm sure they couldn't fix it. All right? Again, they have no common sense. Where is, if you have just a true free market, if I've got something to sell and I want to sell it for 20 bucks and you don't want to pay for it, either I hold it or I figure out a price that you want to pay for it. But we've eliminated all that. We've eliminated the entire free market system, all in the name of it's good for us. Now, that's the real thing that pisses me off, is they always try to make it, they're doing it for me, they're doing it for you. They're doing it for themselves. They're doing it for the phony crookedness of Washington and the entire system where it can allow the rich to remain rich and get richer, and where the middle class continue to get eliminated because of the whole system. Insurance. You don't think that we could have a free market insurance plan if they would let insurance companies go across state lines? You talk about things that are problematic that they've created. the Fed has created this mess and lack of inflation because they don't allow the free markets to trade. They try to manipulate every market and dig into it and try to figure out their price, which is totally idiotic. We don't have a real market. That's the problem. Even the housing market. I once said that I thought the housing market was the last of free markets. But you know what? It's really not, because the housing market is based on interest rates. If interest rates are high, then housing prices come down. So you're trading one for the other. The only one who gets out of that deal is if interest rates are low and you get a big ticket for your house, and that's the last time you're going to sell it and you're not buying another house. Okay, or you can pay cash. So these are the issues that we miss on. And again, until you allow the true free markets, and we haven't had them for a long time. This is not today. I mean, this is not new, but it's gotten worse. It started with Greenspan, okay, and the manipulation of rates. But this has been going on, obviously, for 104 years. But it's really accelerated now because as markets can't keep up and you have to continue to try to manipulate, instead of letting the markets fall and letting the recession or depression come in and let the country rebuild, we continue to stave off and try to push it away. But we all know you can only push it so far. Eventually, it's got to go the other way. And it's a lot easier, as they say, is rip it right off the Band-Aid and move on. All right? But, of course, we're going to see. Again, I'm not making any predictions, and I'm not thinking it's the end of the world. I think that everything will be fine. But, of course, I do believe there will be a major sell-off because, I think all of these reasons, but the biggest being free markets, lack of growth, phony earnings, you name it, the Fed's put it out there. That'll do it for today. This is Bubba's Bottom Line, Todd Bubba Horowitz. And I, as always, thank you for being a part of the show. And we'll see you right here next time. Bubba's Bottom Line, real markets for real people. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll see you later.